Howdy, friends and floor heads. It is Tuesday night, and it's time to talk about games. So, I've got two good buddies of mine on. This is the fourth time we've done this, and let me talk quickly about the format. So, here's the idea: you have, in this case, three guys who love games, and we are going to interview each other. So I get a chance to ask Paul a question and Eric a question. Eric asks Paul a question, asks me a question, and we take turns. So we'll each go into the seat of being the guest as well as the interviewer. And then obviously there'll be discussions that happen afterwards. But for those few people that are watching right now who may not know who Eric is, Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
I am the creator of. I create a bunch of Mothership content, third party. I'm the creator of Rain and Blood. It's a 3PP adventure module for Mothership, as well as a bunch of other like pamphlet and small production stuff. Lifelong writer of games, and I'm a graphic artist.
And Eric, of all the podcasts you've been interviewed on, did you have anyone that you liked more than others?
You, Craig, because you have like one of those radio voices, so I feel like it's like legit. Most of the time, it's like a guy in a basement just being like, "Please, like I don't know what's going. Who are you? Why?" I'm like, "I don't." You had a Kickstarter, right? That's something. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess."
Is that the first interview question?
Oh! Stop! No. Phil from Dark Orb is the man. That's my.
Oh, that's a good show.
Sorry,
That's a good
Craig.
show. No, that's okay. No, I'm behind that one.
You're my backdoor lover because Phil is the show.
Yeah, yeah.
He's awesome.
No, they do a real good show. All right,
Woo.
and then for the three people that don't know who you are, Paul.
Oh, yeah. I'm Paul Vermeiron. I'm the creator of Gridshock 20XX, which is a 4-zine set that I recently put out. It uses Icon superpowered role playing. It is a post superhero apocalypse RPG setting. So I've been around for a while, but this is my first published product. I've edited a lot of stuff, but this is my first thing as like an actual writer, designer, creator, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's me.
And I think I'll tell you both about Paul's product as well as Eric's is not only are they clever, and we got a whole podcast of me blowing smoke up Eric's butt about Rain and Blood, but they're both pretty. Like you guys like put out pretty books,
Thank you.
which I absolutely love. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So I'm going to start by asking Paul a question. Paul will answer the question and then we'll discuss it. So Paul, I changed my question that I had set for you based on our green room discussion. So, I did not realize your passion for the history of RPGs, and how well read you are, and how well you know.
He was testing you, dude.
Basically, over the last 50 years. And so, just like many arts and hobbies, there have been moments in those 50 years where the designs were reductive and stale. And then there was moments when someone came along and, changed how people played the game. So for you, who would you consider over the last 50 years your top 3 or 4 innovators? So if you had to pick 3 or 4 people that between, 1973 and now changed the game, who's up there at the top of the list for you?
Okay. This is gonna be probably some controversial answers here.
I'm here for that. Go, dude.
The first one is not controversial, and that is Greg Stafford. So I think Greg Stafford is one of the most significant game designers and just thinkers about games in general in the history of the hobby. Since you mentioned the green room discussion earlier, I think that there's a lot of things that people are still kind of tinkering with and struggling against, that many of those things were things that Greg Stafford had actually already found solutions for. Not to say that they're the only solutions, but they had already been solved in some cases by him. I think that he was towering intellect of game design. Yeah, man. That's what I said. I know it's kind of a cliche, but
put that on my tombstone, dog.
And Chaosium itself, while he was there, just I don't know how much of the actual presentation of what Chaosium put out in the 80s was his brainchild or not, but there's a lot of stuff in terms of information design that I find really compelling, and still some lessons to be learned from those. today. As somebody who's interested in info design and somebody who has a degree in information studies, like that's important to me. So
Yeah.
going in a radically different direction that's going to make people either laugh or cry. I think one of the other highly influential game designers is Kevin Simbita of
Interesting.
Palladium Books.
Yeah.
Um,
Really?
yes.
Hmm.
So the reason why
Controversial.
now there's a lot of things about
No
Kevin
shade. I mean, I'm
Simbita,
sure he's a good dude. I
a lot of
mean,
things about Kevin Simbita that I am not a particular fan of. A lot of the business practices and sort of shenanigans that have occurred with Palladium Books over the decades are not things that I think are things that one should model their business practices after. Without going into too much detail, I don't want to totally derail and turn this into like a.
I mean,
Yep,
in terms of like world building or just like the rule, because that to me
hang
is like a
on,
whole different,
getting there. So it's
help me
not
out.
necessarily so much the game design. The game design that he did does not hold up to the test of time in the way
Right.
that something that Greg Stafford does. I would argue that some of the very early Palladium stuff is as good as a lot of other games of its time, but that's not saying a whole lot from our current vantage point. But
Right.
what Kevin Simbita did, in my opinion, was he was sort of a carnival barker in the way that a Stan Lee was, or something like that, where he was one of the first people I think to really communicate his own personality and his own passion and his own excitement for what it was that he was creating, and actually got that out onto the page and got that
Interesting.
advertised in comic books, and got somebody like me who was only tangentially interested in role-playing games to start playing role-playing games. So admittedly that's partially like a personal choice,
Yeah.
but I think for a lot of people my age who kind of missed the big D&D boom in the 80s by a few years, um,
Really?
when it started getting into the 90s, I think that Simbita brought a lot of people into the hobby. I think that he brought in a certain type of person into the hobby, and I will be pretty frank about what that kind of person is. It's a comic book geek like what I
Yep.
was at the time, and then you also had things like White Wolf, which are bringing in a very different segment into the hobby. But I think that Simbita doesn't really get the credit in that respect that maybe he deserves, but he certainly gets the flack that he deserves. So
All right.
that's
So
my
that's
number two
two.
guy. Number three is Jeff Grubb would
Wow.
be my other choice, because I think that the original Marvel superheroes role playing game that he helmed at TSR and designed really started to get a lot of people to think about role playing games in a different way, where it wasn't so much a simulation of what would really happen, but a simulation of what happens in the source material. So, before that you have, D&D is not really trying to be it's not trying to play like a fantasy novel, right? It's taking ideas from it, but it's putting it in like this war gamey kind of, system.
I think it's the
But
experience more than the rules. If you're saying right, like you're.
Well, it's
Am I
system
wrong with that?
matters, is what I'm hearing.
yeah, so Marvel Superheroes is one of the first games that I know. I'm sure it wasn't the first. It was one of the first. It's certainly one of the first to popularize the idea that you could be rewarded or penalized for playing in a particular way other than just your character dying.
Yeah.
Like you could succeed or fail at roles depending on how well you were playing your character, which has been, creates a huge there's a whole branch of the family tree that grows off of that.
So, for
Um,
instance, this is a meta currency too, with the
yeah,
karma system and
yeah,
the
it's
fact
it's
that the karma
basically the
system.
first meta currency.
Yeah, and that was tied not to mechanics, it was tied to how you play your character, right? And
Yeah,
that's what's what dictated. No, there's Grub.
and it also has a partially unified dice mechanic where it's like,
Yep,
okay, everything that you do, it just runs off of this chart. Now, whether or not you like the chart, that's leaving that aside.
totally different. Yep.
I'm not saying that chart-based design is something that necessarily we need to go back to, but it worked pretty well for a long time. And it's
Like
still
like
pretty
like a
playable.
like a result chart.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
everything in Marvel was resolved with what was literally called a universal table. So you use one table for everything.
It was the red,
Okay.
yellow, green table, man, on the
Is
back
there
of each
enough
book.
results on that table to make things
Oh, yeah.
interesting?
I played
It
that game for a long time.
Okay, all
and
right,
it
I
and the
believe
game
you.
played well, man, and it was and when you compared it to the other games that were out there, not only from TSR, but everybody else, it just was like, I mean, holy shit, like nothing plays like this, nothing feels like this. And it was great because, of the IP. So it was tied with us, it was one of the first big IPs that, we saw in an RPG as well.
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
love that. I love that pick. All right. I am
Interesting.
That's my
satisfied,
3.
Paul. I love it. I think
Good
those are great
question.
choices. So Paul, you are now the interviewer. You get to ask Eric a question.
All right, Eric, I have a question for you.
Careful. Real careful.
Okay.
Hands in the air, pal.
All right. So,
Off the cuff.
do you think that setting has been de-emphasized in role-playing games? And if so, is that a good thing or bad thing, or ambivalent? Let's talk about the role of setting in role-playing games and whether you think it's been emphasized, de-emphasized, or what.
Hold the phone, Poindexter. Do you mean
Okay.
setting as a lore dump, or like setting as in like we're playing in a science fiction setting? Like, what do you mean?
I would say science fiction is a genre,
Right.
and then what is the science? What kind of science fiction are we playing? What world are we in?
Is it
I-
How
Star
does
Trek?
this setting work?
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is like okay, as a lifelong, I'm like a lifelong GM. So every it doesn't matter what the books say, what the rules say. There's always rules. Like the science fiction, in my opinion, is very difficult to roll to DM because there are rules. Is there any gravity? Is there like is that there's like soft science, hard science rules, and you have to kind of establish that with your players. Like right now, like you and I, I'm talking about running fantasy, and so I have to have a dialogue with my players about how much fantasy do you want? Do you want like high fantasy? Like we're surfing on flying carpets, bruh, or are we, or it's like this guy's a wizard. What is a wizard? Like he's got to go. Like I mean, like we don't like that magic stuff.
Right.
So I think honestly, I want to reduce that more.
Hmm.
I just want to tell a story. Like everything else is not important. Like
Okay.
every and like it's funny. I'm not like Jesus on walks across water, but it's kind of like when I write a story, I think about themes. I want to tell a theme about transformation, or it's body horror, or it's family, or it's sacrifice, and I work backwards from there. So
Interesting.
the setting just helps me tell that story, because there's some stories in fantasy. My advice to people who want to get into running games, start with fantasy, because there's a lot of hand wavy things. There's magic. There's a lady. She lives in a lake, dog. She's got a sword. Why? Doesn't matter. Just go with it. But what does the sword do? I'll make it. We'll find out together. I don't know. Actually, I don't really know what the sword does. We'll find out. I don't know. But I mean, I think exploring those themes, the setting isn't really important. I mean, there's settings I don't like Troika. Sorry, don't like it. My bad. It's just too wild. It's like watching like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the role playing game. I just don't like that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm out. When I come for me, I don't know. What is it? But there has to be some kind of. But once you established what the boundaries are to a box, you can bounce around inside that box. Because I feel like, for example, if when we're playing Mothership, if I just said like Lobo pulls up in a space motorcycle and he's like, "Let's get on board," like you'd be like, "What?" It just shatters the illusion of what's going on.
Sure.
That makes sense.
It does make sense. So
You don't have to.
what I'm hearing from you is that you are more interested in the elements of storytelling than you are
The themes.
in,
Yeah.
lore or setting or milieu
Yeah,
or whatever
lore.
you want to
So
call it.
another, if I get my soapbox for 2 more seconds,
Mhm.
and Paul, I mean, we talk about this every week, but lore is, guys, lore, like, chill with the lore,
You're
chill.
saying this. You're saying to this a guy who wrote a 4-zine set where one zine is nothing but
You,
lore.
but
Just saying.
Paul, you wrote zines, man. I got time for a
Oh
zine. What I don't
no,
have time for is a 500-page Lancer
no.
core rule book where I'm
Ouch,
like,
man!
oh
You
my god.
He's
just throwing them
firing.
out there.
I like,
Okay,
but
so
it's like,
so far we're
but like
coming for
I
we're
like
coming
this.
for Massive Press. We're coming from Elsonian Arts Council. Who else? Who else do you want
That's
to make
selling out
enemies
schedule.
with
No,
right
I
now?
mean, like I like some setting, but I like where it's like loose, where
Jeez.
it's like they're a theme. They're like, it's kind of like thought bubbles, like two-phrase thought bubbles, like despair, um, poverty, or like glimmers of hope, uh, high adventure, and then you write the story
Yeah.
like that. Like when
Yeah.
you go like, when you start the kings, man, like the 15 kings, 15 lands, they fought their brother, and like it's like, okay, like let's play through this together. You start off in a village, you don't know, you've never been I feel like J.R. Tolkien did this. Like the hobbits start out in the Shire. They never been out of the Shire. They don't know. And then they meet all these powerful people who basically tell them throughout the game, like, yo, this is what's going on. And there's a lot of the lore dump happens very slowly in that game. You just don't know. I'm not a big Tolkien guy. I didn't read the books. I read The Hobbit. I can tell you about it now because I experienced those movies as a kid, and then I went back and I read the filler lore. But like that's a good example of good writing and how to like you slowly wade into it. Because I got to tell you, man, I don't want to name any people, but I have friends of mine who DM stuff, and they go, here you go, man. This is like what's going on. I'm like, let me hand it right back to you. I have 2 jobs, homie.
Yeah, I do think that the time element is a major, the time investment that's available is a major thing to keep in mind.
And let me live the lore. Don't dump it.
Yeah. We play through it. So every player in my game, every player in my game, I take their backstory and I just fold it into the game. Like, where are you from? What is your planet from? Okay, well now that exists now. And then and then as they talk about it, back in my planet, where I'm from, we ride dragons and like it's a party, man. It's awesome. Okay, well now it's a part of the story, and because that part is not important. It is. But it's like what's important is these themes that I want to talk about in the game. Like this other stuff is like just adds flavoring to it.
So can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please, Paul.
All right.
I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. So one of the examples that you just mentioned is like, oh, I'm from a planet where we ride on dragons and it's a party. Like
it's
what?
A party, dude.
How do you feel if that goes against the mood or the themes that you're trying to encourage?
I get constantly asked this question from DMs on Discord about how to deal with that. Like Geo recently did it. I want to play an assassin nun. My parents own Yamazaki weapons. Okay, it's some edgelord stuff. Like,
right.
I just go.
I'm a stripper ninja lesbian. Okay.
Yeah. Hey man,
that was the '90s meme of that. Yeah. Sorry.
These are the themes of the game. It has to fit in there. If it can't fit in there, you're the wrong player for the game. Because like with Charles like wanted to play Mothership, and he's like, hey, I want to play a character called like Phil Skywalker, and I was like, no. Why? Because like I'm not super serious, man, but it's just I don't want to start going down these roads because you can't pull it back once you start doing that.
Well, so do you like to have like a session 0 or something like that where you lay out like, okay, you talk to the players and like hash that stuff out ahead of time?
Session 0 suck, man. I don't like them.
Oh God.
Die in your hill, Craig. I want to play a game.
You just want the guy that's playing the assassin nun to get shut down halfway through the session.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't even make it to the first game. Like we'd be talking.
Oh, so you do have a session 0.
So that is a session 0.
Yeah, yes, we do. But it's not like the players all. How about this, Craig? Chill. Everybody chill. Calm down. Have a beer. Have a Zima. Chill. We get together. I'm not scheduling I don't want to schedule a meeting. I want to play a game. So I will do this offline with you one-on-one. And then
that's still session 0, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Whatever, man. Whatever, dude. Whatever. What do you want to call it? Themes, baby. Come on, chill. So, like,
themes and names are important.
So,
that's right. Nomenclature. Damn it.
Don't be afraid. And I'm not the only person who probably says it. But don't be afraid to say no. Like, no, this is not going to break the game. You're not that important.
Great advice. Yep.
You're not that important where I'm going to derail the experiences. Not only I'm also a player. I'm the DM, but I'm also a player. Derail my experience and the guys.
You have to have fun too. It's like, look, it's not all about the players. It is largely about the players.
Correct. You get a lot. To be fair, though, a lot of main character syndrome happens with A, young people, and B, new people. Yep, once you understand, it's like you don't have to be so front loaded. Your character doesn't have to be so front loaded. Like you can just come in as like a guy and then
get your skin.
You will get
play
there, man. Yeah, just play your dude. I will give you stuff. Like you're gonna get there. You're gonna like lose an arm and have a cyborg. We will get there. You don't have to come in like super hot like that.
Right. Yeah, you and I share that, Eric, as far as backstory. Like I am a firm believer. Like if you want to have your 3-page backstory, knock yourself out. But I will argue you are confining yourself. You think you're making your character more rich. What you're doing is creating concrete walls for yourself. Yep. Go into it, get in their skin, play a little bit, figure it out where they are in the world, and then let the character come to life. I'm a firm believer in that.
Are you ready for hot take 3, Craig?
Let's do it.
Strap yourself in. I don't like Quest RPG. Okay, I think it's ridiculous.
Don't like what?
Was it Paul Quest RPG? The
Yeah,
British one?
Quest. You're talking
Okay,
about Quest.
but however, well, you better. It was supposed to be like the D&D killer. It's very like Power by the Apocalypse adjacent, but I don't like it because it's just too hand wavy. But one thing that Quest does really well is it gives you a set of questions. Fill out these 10 questions, and that's your backstories. Who are you? Where did you come from? What are you running from? Where you're from? It's known for this, and that's your whole backstory. And so when I made a character sheet for my last release, and I put that's in there. It's like just fill this out and then hand to your DM. You can fill out 10 seconds, and then maybe you don't end up that way, but you start this way, and then that's you're just a guy. You come in.
I'm a huge fan of Cypher System does this, and then Broken Compass does this, the one sentence. And what's cool is the one sentence not only informs everybody at the table, but it's cool because in Cypher and Broken Compass, the one sentence also has mechanical implications, a little bit like Fate, right? So I think that's super clever, super clever.
Yeah, I was gonna say that reminds me of like the high concept trait. Like if you're playing Fate, like you're supposed to have a high concept. Like if you are, like let's say you're playing freaking I don't know, Lord of the Rings, like and playing Bilbo Baggins, like, oh, I'm a small town hobbit who's off on an adventure and I have a magic ring, like bam,
done.
Like that's your character.
Yep.
Yeah. And is there more to it than that? Yes, but that is the summary of it.
All right. If I can have like a self own, okay. So when I play a lot of White Wolf, I'm like that guy, like
nobody's shocked.
Oh,
go ahead.
No one likes you.
yeah.
Nobody likes you, whatever. But like in White Wolf, it's like I want you to write me a novel. Like, like 6 pages, and like we got off on that shit. Like, oh my god, like this is like some just be the biggest edgelord you can be, man. Like, oh my god. So and like it took a while to like let go of that. Yeah. But now I'm like, I'm not going back.
Right? I mean, that's a teenage. That's a teenage thing.
Yeah, I have high powered internet now. I have like smartphone. I don't have time for all that. We're gonna.
Yeah, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I had the same 5-page backstory with my character for Rifts. Okay, like Rifts is not thought of as a game that's about deep character exploration, but I was 15, so to me it was.
Yep.
So
very true. All right, Eric, your turn to ask me a question.
Okay, what is your least favorite? Now you have to have played this, Craig. No tricks. What is your least favorite system? A game system you played, and why? And you don't have to like name drop because you're not like me. You're not like a super cool guy, but you have to like tell me. You have to like explain to me in real talk why you didn't like this, and like, and it has to be a game you played like more than like one time, like 2 or 3 times.
Shit.
Checkmate.
So here's the problem, right? The problem is that I've read so many games that a lot of the weeding out happens at that stage, which means I never play it, right?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, like for me, like if you're really passionate about a game, like a game, and even if I don't like it, I'll play it. Like,
God. All right, I'm gonna give a shit answer.
Haha. I mean, that's an answer.
So, a game that played a lot different than I thought it would. So, we're a situation where I read the game, and like I said, I've read a lot of games, right? So I consider myself reasonably good of being able to read a game and imagine it at the table, and
actualize it or whatever.
Right, and there's very rarely is there a gap between them. And this is not a criticism of the system. This was just it's a deceptive system, and I actually like the system. Achtung Cthulhu using 2d20.
Really?
Cthulhu was the first time that I played 2d20, and I read Achtung Cthulhu, and I was like, oh, like pretty light, kind of rules light. It's got tags and stuff like that.
Wow.
And then that game was crunchy as fuck, like much crunchier than I expected. And so I was disappointed the first time I played Achtung Cthulhu.
Oh, go back pedal, Craig. Just go all in.
Right.
Feet, man. I hate that shit. It's fucking ridiculous.
I have since, after jumping that gap, realized that I like the system. But I will tell you that the first time I ran my first Achtung Cthulhu game and got done with it,
you ran it.
Oh yeah,
you ran it. Okay.
Yeah, I ran it. I walked away going, I don't think I like this game.
Because I hear about that Conan Rpg that came out. People say that about that game. But like, I don't know, man. Like this is like really weird. Like, I don't know.
Conan is like the crunchiest 2D20 game.
It is the crunch.
There are other ones that are lighter than that. Like I played the Star Trek game. I actually thought it was really good. But anyway,
Very good.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, and so I'm so happy that I ran it a second time with a different group and realized I do like
Get out of my house. You guys, other guys.
You guys are ruining this game for me.
Yeah, I was like, I do like this game, and it was that huge gap. So I think like the ultimate answer for me is, and maybe there's a criticism there, right? That the way the game is presented in the book was deceptive. Or the gap could be on my side. So I kind of sideswiped it. And the only reason I sideswiped it, Eric, I mean, there's several games that I've read that you know, I know I'm not going to play. Right.
Didn't they just release something recently?
They got a new SRD out for the 2D20 system. I think one thing that, you know, Paul, you and I were talking about before the show is Chris Birch is doing a really good job of adapting that, because even though Conan is a 2D20 and Star Trek Adventures are 2D20, they're not the same.
No, and then like you've got like lighter versions like John Carter and stuff like that. Like it's similar to the Free League Year Zero engine that way, where it's like there are very, very light implementations like Tales from the Flood, and then there's super crunchy implementations like Twilight 2000, and then there's like a range in between, and the system still works. So I like both of those games kind of for that reason. And they both have similarities between them, but anyway, I don't want to get off on a huge tangent.
The other thing too that's big for me when it comes to systems, and this has become a somewhat recent like revelation for me, is when I'm at the table running a game and we get to a point where, like, you know, how do we handle, like, what's the rule for this, or how do we handle this? Everybody make their best guess. Let's go with it, right? And
I
then
do.
after the game, we'll look it up and we'll figure it out. And what I really love is games where our guess is either exactly right or damn close, because that means that it's consistent. And Year Zero is great for that, right? And I think 2D20 does a pretty good job with it as well. Savage Worlds does a wonderful job with it, where there's just a consistent system that kind of ties it all together. It gets into, you know, Marvel superheroes in the same way. All right, Edgelord, my time to ask you a question.
Bring it, hot stuff.
All right. So the fastest way to start a fight at a nerd convention is to stand up and yell, "Aliens is an action movie, not a horror movie." So your Reign in Blood for Mothership really has its hands in a couple different genres, right? It's not just a simple one genre piece of work. But I want to focus on horror. So in your mind, Eric, what makes a game, a scenario, or a movie horror as opposed to action, as opposed to suspense? Like, how do we know I'm playing or watching horror?
Okay, so people have gotten back to me about, or they asked me how to run. I'll just use Reign in Blood as an example. I caution people all the time, like, don't just run around the hallways and shoot people. The real horror in Reign in Blood comes from like the passengers, because there's several times in that module, and Paul read it, like, passengers can be awoken and used as bait. They are awoken and like they're being murdered, and you have to deal with it. Passengers are being tasked to hunt you down and kill you. It's all fun and games when you're like, let's go, Steven Seagal. It's another thing when guys like, for every second you don't come to the bridge, I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to ask them what their name is and why they want me to survive. I'm going to shoot them.
So why isn't that suspense? Why is that horror, Eric?
Because, well, part of that is suspense, but it's how they're being killed. You know, it's like they're not just being killed. They're, you know, it's like, so a lot of the inspiration for the villains in that game is from like Heart of Darkness and Conrad. Like, there's like, well, what's horrifying to me is this so normal for those guys. It's like, yeah, we just like, it's nothing. We're just gonna like chop off the arms and legs of this old person and then like whatever, let them bleed out. So as a westernized person, you're like, whoa, you can't do that, man. Like, we have these morals and stuff. It's like, we don't have the same morals you do, and we don't see a problem with it. And we have a permission set. Like, it gets to that whole religious horror thing where it's like, we have a whole doctrine that says it's okay to do that, and we're going to do it, and we don't care, and we know it freaks you out. So it's kind of like the dark side of culture shock, where it's like, But why? There's certain cultures that just do things that we find like anathema over here we would never do. We just wouldn't, and it's like a horror. So, like in Aliens, there is action, suspense, and they're running around shooting things. But the one thing that holds Aliens back, if you want to nitpick, it's a perfect movie, but like you can't talk to them. They're like a force of nature. They're just running around. So when you having, so I was like, well, I mean, like a lot of science fiction horror is like this. We go to an isolated moon base, and there's a creature there, and then we gotta run. Like, but you can't reason with it. So there's no like. There's an untapped place in horror where it's like, I'm trying to reason with you, man. You can't reason with me. I'm just an insane killer. Like like Jim Jones. It's like the guy just told 1,000 people to kill themselves. Like that's crazy. You know what I mean? That's some. I mean, sorry, like censor warning. I don't know if you've read this. That's the greatest loss. That was the greatest loss of American life all at once since like 9/11. So like that is horrifying, and it just scarred people, man. I mean, that's so. Not to be like the edgelordy or whatever, but like those human beings human beings will always be the most terrifying thing in any whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's where like John Carpenter was so good with that, right? Like The Thing is not about the monster.
No.
Halloween is not about Michael Myers. And no, I agree. So all right, so let me finish off this way then, Eric, because it'll help me kind of solidify your answer. What do you consider one of the most genre defining horror movies? So if you had to pick not necessarily your favorite horror movie, but the purest form of the genre, what's an example movie that you would give somebody?
Like pure horror. I mean,
When you
outside
say,
of like saying like Halloween.
Yeah,
But
when someone
okay,
says
so I would tell
horror,
you.
you say watch this movie.
No, okay, so I would say Nightmare on Elm Street by far. Like it basically mentally scarred children, myself included. I couldn't sleep alone, dude, because like you're vulnerable. You're sleeping somewhere. You think, and people are attacking you. Like if you want to see true horror, Craig, take your homeboy out in the middle of the ocean at night and dump him in the water and leave. Will he survive? Yeah, I mean, I'll be back in a nap. Maybe you don't know. You're in a weird environment you can't control, and you can't trust your senses.
Yep.
So like even like going back to the module, it's like your people are sleeping and they're attacked while they're asleep. I recently watched the making of on Netflix the making of Nightmare on Elm Street. It was born from that sleep that Paul helped me out that sleeping sickness from Vietnamese sleeping people were having in California. You know what I'm talking about?
I do not.
The director read an article about basically these people dying in their sleep, these Vietnamese people dying in their sleep in California.
Are you talking about sleeping sickness, like tsetse flies and all
that?
No,
not the African. Don't worry about it. They basically saying there was some Vietnamese people who were dying in their sleep, and the author used that as a zeitgeist, or used that as the impetus to create Nightmare on Elm Street. It was because you're so vulnerable when you're asleep, and you get Freddy. Spoiler, he pulls you into this dream world where you have no control. The stairs are melting, man. Oh my God. You're running around and it's pure terror because you have no control. If a group of guys broke into my house right now, I would take these headphones off and I could fist fight them. I could fight a bear maybe. I wouldn't win, but the bear, we're both, there's rules, there's gravity, like that to me is a pure horror experience. I guarantee you, Craig, if you have, I don't know what your situation is domestically, but if you have like kids or whatever, and you go, son, I'm going to turn the lights off, play Nightmare on Elm Street. I'll be back in 3 hours. Don't leave the room. And he hears a car drive away. I guarantee you need therapy, dog. Your kid's going to need some therapy, man.
It's really easy to forget the impact that Nightmare on Elm Street had. I don't think that's a bad pick, man, as a genre-defining piece of work. All right, so
Jaws
Eric, oh, good. Don't even get me started. I love Jaws. So, Eric, you get to interview Paul.
Ooh, Paulie. Can I call you Paulie?
No.
Still no.
Paul, I feel like we talk all the time, so I know a lot about you, but I still want to know, like, what in your mind is the quintessential fantasy role-playing setting? Like when you're like, somebody's like, hey man, we're gonna do like barbarians on dirt bikes, and you're like, hell yeah, let's go. Like, I mean, what is it that like gets you going about what fantasy setting? Like where on a scale 1 to 10, like where does it drop, and like what things like get you excited to play in that fantasy setting?
We're talking about a fantasy role playing game setting, like something that was
Yes.
specifically designed for RPGs.
Yeah, this is kind of like my backhand serve to you because you're setting me. I'm setting you back.
Oh no, that's cool. That's cool. Okay, so that's a complicated question.
Ooh.
Well, it's like is it? Is it what I want out of fantasy, or what I think of when I think of fantasy role playing games, or what I don't know.
You're trying to
Um,
generate maximum enjoyment from a fantasy role playing game.
Maximum enjoyment
What does that setting look like? What setting do you think?
For you, Paul.
Yeah, for you? Like, oh my god, this is my
for
dream
me.
setting. Like Warren Ellis is like you're like your
That's
DM
such
or
a good
whatever.
that's such a good question because I'm one of these people who has bought almost every almost any fantasy game can pitch itself to me and I will consider buying it, which is ridiculous because I haven't run fantasy in years.
Yeah.
I've been running superhero games and sci-fi games for years. So it's like, why? What is this hold that fantasy has on me that keeps me coming back and buying a million different iterations of the same stinking idea? What is it that I'm trying to recapture or find that
Well,
I've never
forget
managed to
about
get?
forget about the rules. We're talking about just setting. Like a Conan would be like
Okay,
Hyboria would be a setting or something like
well, I mean that wasn't made for role playing games, so now that's out.
that. Oh
But
my god.
hey, those are the rules that you set.
Hey, you know what?
Um,
I'm just gonna sit back and enjoy this warm meal of light. You can just
okay.
go
So
nuts.
my favorite.
Go
Okay, if we're
nuts.
not talking about role playing games, like the flavor of fantasy that I would probably most like to see encapsulated well in a role playing game is something like Fritz Leiber's Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stuff.
Mm,
I really enjoy that. It is sort of D&D, like it's proto D&D. It's one of the things that influenced D&D, but it's not D&D.
yeah.
It's sword and sorcery, but it's a more swashbuckling and witty version of sword and sorcery than you might be thinking of if you're thinking of Conan. I like that world. I like those characters a lot. I like what's implied about the way that it works. I like the way that magic works in it. I like that there's no clerics or yeah, anyway, that's something that I would really like to see. And that's kind of what I want to see when I'm buying all of these freaking D&D clones and fantasy heartbreakers that end up always letting me down because I don't really know exactly what I want, but it's something sort of like that.
So
Yeah.
like
And the
seven
D&D,
C kind of deal.
no, you're gonna have to read some Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, man. I'm sorry.
That's the one genre that I was like, I don't know much about this. I need to do a deeper dive on it. That's the
Get the
only
audio.
genre.
Get the audiobooks, Eric. They're phenomenal stories.
Yeah,
So
Phenomenal
I have to
stories.
dig into it.
And you forget when they were written. That's how good they are. Is they
yeah,
survive time.
yeah. They're really good. I will admit that I haven't read them in over a decade, so I do need to revisit
Oh, so
them.
you
But
have read them all? You actually read the
oh,
books?
I read them. I read them all,
Okay.
and I even read
Like,
like the weird sequel that White Wolf put out that was written by somebody else. Swords Against the Shadowland.
because I started reading the Black Company because people was like, you gotta read this, man.
Oh, that's something else.
I
I
know, but it's
actually
like that's
I
a
haven't read
genre.
those.
Like somebody was like, how have I never really gotten into this? I don't really know anything about this.
But when it comes to fantasy RPGs world, that's kind of what I'm interested in. I will say that I think that the most D&D setting is actually Planescape.
Oh, interesting.
I think that Planescape is the setting that takes the things that make D&D its own genre rather than, kind of attempts at existing stuff. The parts that make D&D its own unique genre, which it absolutely is, um, are most emphasized in Planescape. Now, how playable that actually is, I don't know because I've never actually played Planescape.
I
But
have.
I think that
It is playable.
then let's talk about that. But no, I think it's just as far as if you want something that takes the ideas of D&D and like embraces them the most, for me that would be Planescape. But if you want to take like a setting that I think is designed the best for D&D style gaming, I think that's actually Eberron is the one that's
Ooh.
best
In-
designed for the way people
Interesting
actually
choice.
play now.
I would
So
have said
yeah,
Ravnica or something like that if it was 5e stuff.
I
That's like
haven't read that.
super duper high fantasy. It's like
So you yeah, see, you may be right because I haven't read it, so I can't even weigh in on that.
So knowing that you're such a huge fan, Paul, what do you think about some of the iterations of Lankmar in gaming? You know, like DCC has done Lankmar. There's D&D iterations of it.
So hilariously, even though I just said what I want is a role playing game that plays like Lankmar, I haven't bought any of the Lankmar role playing games because none of
Got
them
him.
from
Got him,
none of them
Craig. Got him.
none of them
Got
from
him.
what I've read seem like they do a very good job because they're all based on D&D.
True.
And I don't
Not far enough from
know if
removed.
D&D is going to do that setting in a way that I like. Now, I will say I've heard that the Mongoose iteration had good writing. I didn't think that the art looked very good, and that scared me away because I'm very
Yeah.
picky about the visual presentation. I didn't think the layout looked very good. That
Mhm.
was unfortunately typical Mongoose at the time. They turned it around, but at the time they were kind of in a weird spot. Um,
Mm.
I also am not the world's biggest fan of Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I have to be careful here because Dungeon Crawl Classics fans are very passionate about their game, and I respect that.
You hear that, America?
Yeah,
But
they'll figure out where you live. Yeah.
Dox him.
it's
Get
not
him.
for me. I play tested Dungeon Crawl Classics when it first was being developed, and then I quickly realized it was just not going in the direction that I thought it was.
It
I thought
just
that they were like, let's take it back to like the inspirations of D&D and make a different game out of that. But instead, what it really is, it's like let's out D&D,
Yeah,
which is
to a certain
okay,
degree.
but it's
Yep.
not what I thought it was going to be, and that's
Yep.
more on
That's
me than
fair.
I
anybody
just feel
else.
like it's just getting like the releases, like the even the 3PP stuff is just getting wilder and wilder and wilder. I'm like,
There's a lot of really interesting looking stuff that's come out for it, but unfortunately, I've just got my bias against it now that I can't really shake. And anyway, what I was going to say was I've heard that the DCC implementation is good and that it changes a lot of things.
Yep.
So maybe I should check it out.
You should, because it's not the same, Gonzo DCC out D&D that the base game is. It's definitely worth picking up.
And I like Gonzo, by the way. Like I used to really push back against that term, but I've just like learned to just accept it because I've had people refer to my stuff as Gonzo, and I'm like, all right, that's fine. Call it what you want to call it. So I'm learning to love the term Gonzo. But yeah, I like the sort of aesthetic at DCC. I think it's pretty cool.
I like the aesthetic too. It's just like there's like I just don't like it when it's like we're in a flying mushroom castle, like in outer space. Like that's not like whoa, what the like. There's a lot of that's like more and more of that stuff coming out, and then like I just don't like frustration when my players are just constantly frustrated because when you have those systems and it's a roll under stat system and you're constantly failing rolls, then I'm just like, trust me, guys, we're gonna get to the good part where you that doesn't happen if you survive.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's what I
The
don't
the
like.
funnel idea is not something that appeals to me personally. I know a lot of people like it. That's cool. It's just not my style. The other, just to go, my other thing for fantasy, just because I don't just like one flavor,
Right.
is I also would really like to see something that has the vibe of the old 1980s Robin and Sherwood TV series.
Oh my god, here we go
I love
again.
that show, man.
Here,
Um,
all
The
right.
paganism,
No,
the
I keep going,
paganism.
keep going. I got to hear this. Here,
I
why?
would love to see that. I
He's
am
the
a big
only one
fan.
who's seen this
I'm
show.
a big fan of like 1980s like British fantasy.
Excalibur,
Like
Flesh and Blood.
The UK series from TSR, the early Warhammer stuff, the Dragon Warriors game book series, which is sort of in between a game book and a role playing game. I'm a big fan of that one. Anything that's got that kind of like, you know, murky fog machine, uh, you
Sounds.
know,
What is it? Was it Sherwood? No, Pinewood Studios Sound Stages.
yeah, soundstage. Yes, exactly.
It's like
Um,
half all like Shakespearean actors from the theater company, like the great Shakespearean theater company.
yeah, I am a huge sucker for that.
Big
I've
monologues,
I spent some time as a kid living in the UK, and that stuff had a huge impact on me. So I kind of have like two different versions of fantasy that I want to see. But yeah,
Yeah.
those are my big two.
So, knowing how it, like you love superheroes, what is the superhero setting you're happiest in? Building off that.
Superhero setting, that's a tricky one because like I don't really think that the
oh
superhero
man.
genre is about setting so much, which is
Okay,
why it's
that's
kind of
why.
weird that I made one, right?
Right.
Yeah,
But
I've tried to pin him down this a lot too. He won't give a good answer. He doesn't
what
want
I
to give
was trying to do with this thing right here with Grid Shock was I was trying to like make a super like how can we play in the way that people usually play role-playing games but play superhero characters. So I was like, well, the best way to do that, it's like, you gotta have a post-apocalyptic world that's got points of light in it, and you're moving around from place to place.
Yeah.
The bad guys are in charge. Like, you are not the authorities. The authorities are bad. You have to run away from them.
Right.
Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent there. But as far as superhero settings, like for role-playing games, I don't have a favorite one. I tend to
Uh-huh.
just run them in established universes, or I'll make up my own. I
Okay.
think part of the fun of playing superhero role-playing games is kind of like playing the role of a superhero universe editor and being like, okay, what do I want there to be? And I think that the answer for that in superhero genre is usually I want there to be everything.
Right.
Like, if you try to like limit your superhero genre down, then you start to get off into sci-fi territory, which is kind of like where I am with this,
Yep.
and where games like Aberrant and Trinity go, where it's like, well, if you try to like explain where everything comes from, then you're starting to move in a SF direction. And that's okay.
Yep. Interesting. All right. My interview question, Paul. What do you got?
Yeah,
Oh
ask Craig
yes,
something. Put Craig on blast.
Craig, you have clearly run and played a lot of RPGs here on Third Floor Wars. Is there a style or genre that you think is kind of underserved that you would like to see more of, or something that maybe nobody's ever tackled at all? And that could be in terms of how the system works, or in terms of like what the genre is or what it's about. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, and everybody knows my favorite genre for role playing is horror, right? But and it has to be the second most common RPG genre that's played. So I don't think that that's a good pick. I I am getting more and more interested in the what I'm going to call pure action oriented RPGs. And the examples I'll give you is like Feng Shui 2, Broken Compass, games that are trying to mimic just the all out just action film, action hero genre. It's I've not run it yet, like, and I want to. I want to run Broken Compass. I want to run Feng Shui 2, and I love the idea of mimicking those 80s and 90s
Mhm.
action movies, and as well as like kung fu movies where you're not going to die. I mean, and even in Broken Compass, you're not going to fail. Right?
What
Like
about what
everything you
about
try,
like
you're gonna do. And I think it's a very interesting genre. So, and you just don't see it. And there's you can count on one hand how many systems there are that are built to hold up that type of a genre,
okay? What about one is Pulp Cthulhu?
right?
Have you played that? And one
Oh
is
yeah,
the other one is Exalted, bro. I mean, that's
yeah.
like basically the entire game. He's like you're just running around DBZing it all over the place.
Let me
I've
let me
not
make
played this.
another s- let me make another suggestion for you, and this is one that's actually created by somebody who is from your neck of the woods. Friend of mine named Ian Williams made a game called Action Movie World, which is a powered by the apocalypse game
Interesting.
Dun, dun,
that
dun.
is literally about making 80s action movie characters. So Action Movie World, it's on Drive Through
I'll
RPG.
pick it up.
It's inexpensive. I think you may want to check that out.
Yeah, I definitely will check it out. And Paul, if you're into mechanics like I am, if you have not picked up Broken Compass, that, that's one to pick up.
I will check it
Uh,
out.
yeah, it is. It's a very interesting system. A very interesting
Cool.
system. It's the first time I've ever seen an implementation of you. Your roles are not fail. Like you can't fail,
Right, you don't fail. Yeah.
and it's a really interesting the way they handle it. And really stands it up. All right, guys. This was great. It's exactly what I try to do on these round tables. Is a chance to kind of poke each other and get some opinions and thoughts out there. So Paul, we saw it at the very beginning, but I want to know exactly what grid shock is. So for those watching that are not familiar with grid shock, why do they need to run over and pick it up now?
Okay, so Gridshock 20XX is my superhero world. You could play it with any superhero game or any game that can handle people that have powers. Um, it was created, the stats in it are for Icon Superpower Role Playing. Icon Superpower Role Playing is a very relatively light superhero game. I think you could take a look at this and convert it to pretty much anything else. But the reason why you would want to check this out is just if you want a world where the superheroes are not in charge, where it's not like, oh, the world's in trouble and the government's going to call up your characters and go send them to go take care of it. These are superheroes in a world where they are in trouble. They're hunted. If you've if you read like the old um Days of Future Past comics,
I was thinking that. Yep.
it's got some of that in there.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's not quite that bleak. It's not like the superheroes have been completely ground under the bad guys'
But
heels.
it's got that resistance fighter feel to it, which I
It's got
love.
a resistance fighter feel. You travel around. Different parts of North America are basically ruled by different types of villains. So I try to design it for playing as much as possible. I think that the superhero genre is a really flexible genre, but it's not necessarily one that always works great for what we consider like a sort of classic style of role-playing game where you travel around and get into trouble. So that's what this is designed to do. And it's 4 zines. It's available in print from Exalted Funeral. It's available in PDF from Drive Through RPG at the moment. Um, yeah, it's 4 zine set. It's fully illustrated. I'll just show you what I'm talking about here. Like
It's pretty badass, dude.
His this graphic designer is very talented man. We're a
yeah.
very
So
talented family.
it's a
Yeah.
it's a colorful book. I've got it's profusely illustrated. I spared no expense, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, hired some very nice people to do the artwork. My brother is actually the layout and graphic designer for
Nice.
this, and I'll also squeak in a second plug if it's okay.
Of course.
So our publishing imprint is called VX2. You can see like the little logo there. VX2 is me and my brother Chris. Chris has a role-playing game that is upcoming that is called Terminal State. Terminal State is what he describes as a corporate dystopia role-playing game. And that is using the Year Zero engine. So
Ooh, you got me.
yeah,
I'm in.
so it's cyberpunk-ish. It's more of a reinterpretation of cyberpunk. I think if we were going to make cyberpunk now, what would that mean? Based on what we
Mhm.
know about where things are going now, rather than where they were going in the 80s. So I think it's going to be really cool. We have a quick start that's going to come out eventually, but keep your eye out for Terminal State. And VX2 has also made a couple of free downloadable classes for the Cyborg role-playing game,
Nice.
which is based off of the Merkborg system. If you're familiar with that one. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's my plugging.
Yeah, and what we're gonna need to do, Paul, is get you and your brother on the show to really talk through all of this.
Cool.
So we
Vermeiron
can look
Senior.
forward to that. All right, Eric, what do you make, man?
I make all kind of stuff. I make games, man. I try to sell. I try to sell games, so I
So
don't have to be in the streets, Craig.
there's people watching right now, Eric. They're like, "Holy shit, he may be the coolest person I've ever seen on
Yeah.
Would you
Craig's
believe I'm
channel."
43 years old? You can be cool. You
And
can be just like me.
and
You can
and
just live alone with a cat. Leave me a cat back here, man.
I need to buy everything Eric's ever made. So where are we gonna send him?
I don't know, drive through. I mean, I don't know. What do y'all buy stuff at these days?
Well,
Itch
Eric,
drive through.
Eric, I don't know. I like Paul. Can you teach him how to plug, please?
Okay.
I play all the time. Y'all have my shit all the time, man.
So
like, come on, bruh. Just
So
Google my name.
Eric Alsandor is the bad boy RPG designer of products such as Rain and Blood, available now
Yeah.
from
Paul,
Tuesday Night Games,
yeah.
soon from Exalted Funeral. Here, I'll do
Yeah.
it for you, man.
Yeah, all that stuff. They just cut me checks. Okay. You know what? That's how big time I am. They cut me checks. They don't even put my stuff on the website.
Eric, what projects have you
they've
got
been
in the
having that.
pipeline? What's coming out? What's coming out?
All right, so
Everybody knows about Rain and
I'm
Blood.
glad you asked. All right, you can get out of here, Craig. I'm glad you asked because I have a 3 brochure drop getting ready to happen. Why?
Ooh.
Because my buddy Penny, my buddy at Leyline Press, they had a really good drop experience with
I'll be on
Albion
Tails.
Tales, and
Yep.
I'm highly impressed by the maximized production of that zine. No, I'm not kidding. So I have a design philosophy, and the reason why I like Stockholm Cartel, the reason I like Sean McCoy is because like we're not chained anymore. I don't like this stale. You can buy my goal is if you buy my stuff, it's like this, you will just have it because it's cool. Like you don't have to play the game. You just like it because you want to flip the books and get inspiration from it. I have a ton of RPGs. I will never read this. I'm sorry, I don't have time. But I will go through and like this is really good info design. These isometric maps are really unique and interesting. So I try to do that stuff, but it has to be able to communicate information because I have this degree and all that stuff. So I'm doing a 3 brochure drop. I'm doing Miami Laser Cutter Massacre. If you've ever wanted to play Escape from New York meets The Warriors meets Miami Vice
These lasers.
with lasers. If you are a laser enthusiast, I purposely use the word laser probably 400 times in an 8-page zine. It's
That's
a good.
amazing.
I'm doing a physical print of a Hyperdrive Degeneration. So if you back Rain and Blood and you want to get a physical copy of that with all the stuff in front of you, you can have that. And then I'm doing Lair of the Biomancer, which is a Island of Dr. Moreau meets
Nice.
Island of Dr. Moreau meets Heart of Darkness hex crawl through a jungle map. So you're on a river, hex crawling on a river towards a destination, and you're just encountering like madness in Mothership along the way. So like
Very cool.
so basically I want to try to put I'm a lifelong DM, so I write things from that perspective. So there's stuff for the players on the table, there's stuff for you, and like I always make maps. And my biggest problem, if I don't want to out anybody, my biggest problem with a lot of the stuff in the OSR is like it's just too hand wavy. Like it's just you have to do too much prep work underwriting everything. So I do as much as I can, and I would do more to fit in the page to give you everything you need to start playing a game. I think Death in Space did that too, Paul, when they dropped some brochure adventures with and it's like that's
the
a really
core
good
rulebook
idea.
comes with 2 brochures.
Yeah, so it's like here are some ideas, and you don't have to play. It's like these are really cool like ideas, and you can just riff off of them. But that's what's next. I'm like, we'll see if I can get it done by the end of Zine Quest. It might not be, but that's what's
You're talking
next.
about Zine Quest next year, right? Or
Oh,
is it this year?
this one, the next
This
month,
one?
I don't know, man.
One that's going in August or the one that's coming in February?
I don't live in your world. Yeah, the one like now. This one.
Okay, so that's Zine Quest 4. Zine Quest 4
Zine
that
Quest
comes that
4
starts next
Quattro,
month.
the Quattro.
Yeah, I feel like I'm you're a pro wrestler, like I'm your manager. Like I'm just like explaining what you're gonna do. He's gonna drop this, and then this is gonna come out. Yeah,
I mean, like,
Oh.
yeah. So anyway, long story short, too. So the 3 adventure drop is going to fund artwork for 2 other projects, Bladius, and which is a set, which is a Mothership campaign setting, and then another project which
Awesome.
it's a good mothership. It's a good mothership setting, by the way. I played in it for the last year.
Oh
It's good.
yes,
Cool.
it's basically because I get people that because I started releasing all my notes on the Discord, and people are just like, "Is there like let me just go ahead and put it because like it's too much stuff to compile, so let me just go ahead and put it in a book, and then you can just have it." And then it's just like
It's battle tested.
Yeah, it has one of those design philosophies of like instead of having lore dumps, it's like here are interesting places you can go to, and then there's some adventure hooks if you want to explore them. Because what happens a lot of times, and you guys can back me up on this, when you have too much freedom, like you have a ship, you go anywhere you want, the players freeze up. They have design. I don't know where to go. Well, here we go. Let's go to this observatory, Deep Space Observatory. Let's see what's going on over there. And as a DM, you can be like, okay, well, next session we'll go and you can write some stuff in there and some NPCs and some maps. So that's the goal. Because like right now with Mothership, it's like there's like a back and forth about how much setting lore they want to give you, and they keep pulling back and coming forward for that. Like I don't just take this and have fun with it.
You're a theme guy.
Yeah, like these are themes, like just like this is bad. Like go. Friendship. We just had a big campaign about friendship and sacrifice. Yeah,
we did.
That's cool.
Teamwork, and like they all high-fived and slow.
Yeah, I think the campaign did end with a freeze frame high five, which would probably make Sean McCoy scream because none of us. Yeah, we. I mean, my character that I introduced in the first adventure survived to like 5 freaking Mothership adventures. Like that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah. So that's why on the character that I put up for Rain and Blood, that's why there's a section that's called "I have survived." I have survived a dinosaur bite. I have survived an attack by the world's greatest assassin. I have survived. I have killed and survived the galaxy's most notorious criminal. I have killed a space pirate queen.
Yeah, I got bit by a Tyrannosaurus. Yeah.
Nice. Now, piggybacking on what we talked about earlier, Craig. Now, if you wrote a backstory and was like, all these things happened, I just roll my eyes. But he was just a construction worker. He
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah,
just
when we
punch the
started, I
clock.
was just like, "Oh, I'm a construction worker, and I was in the military, and I shot somebody I wasn't supposed to, and I'm on the run." That's how it started, and then it ended, "I've been bit by a dinosaur. I've got a laser sword." Yeah,
It
it's like,
does.
yeah,
It's
but it
I
all
hilarious.
made sense when it happened.
Well, and I'm a firm believer in this that you have no idea who or what your character is until session 2 or 3. I
Yeah,
really think it takes
I
time and it
really
takes
hate
the
the
world.
idea of, like, building a character and planning, like, what's gonna
Yeah.
happen to you. It's like, "Well, 5 sessions from now, I'm gonna have taken this feat, and I'm gonna" it's like, "Oh, man." Like,
Paul has
Yeah.
also killed 2 other player characters, and he really got mad about it. He's also
I don't like doing that. I really, really don't.
he's like
I am
calling my
not a
phone, being
PvP
like,
guy.
"I don't, why? I don't understand." Like they put you in a corner. They put you in a corner. You had no choice, man. It's like,
All right.
I really don't like being that guy. I really don't wanna be like, "Well, that's what my character would do." Like,
Starlight,
no,
Starlight, we're out of here.
All
Starlight.
right,
alright.
guys. Third Floor Wars. The podcast is Tabletop Talk. I've already interviewed Eric on it, so you can go back and listen to my great interview with Eric. I'm going to have Paul and his brother on it soon, so you can look
My
forward
brother
to
Chris.
that. Um, and you can check it out, guys. I can't thank you enough. This was a ton
Yeah,
of
a
fun.
lot of fun, man.
I can't thank
You're
you
one of the good
enough.
ones, Craig. One of
This
the good
was
ones.
one of the funnest,
I'm glad.
one of these things I've been on. Thank you.
Oh, good, good. All right, and for those of you that watched all the way to the end, I love you too. Take care. Howdy, friends. Thank you for watching. All our content is archived and organized in playlists on the Third Floor Wars YouTube channel. Check it out. And if you could like, follow, subscribe, and even set your notifications to this channel on YouTube and Twitch, we'd appreciate it, and it'll make sure that you catch all of our content. I talk with creators, designers, and experts across the gaming landscape in every episode of our podcast, Tabletop Talk. Open up your favorite podcatcher and search for Tabletop Talk from Third Floor Wars. Support your creators. They make the content you love, and it's your support that makes it happen. If you want to help us, go to Third Floor Wars on patreon.com, and you can help us for as little as $1 a month. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Take care.